Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's well. It's Wednesday, the eve of Tu B'Shvat. Tomorrow is Tu B'Shvat. We're learning Sanhedrin Perek Beis. We're up to Perek Beis, Baruch Hashem. In the previous Perek in Mishnah Hay, the Mishnah mentioned certain halachas that apply to a Kohen Gadol. Now, many of the halachas discussed in this Mishnah are based on the pasuk that says "V'hakohen hagodol me'echav." The Kohen Gadol was Gadol me'echav. He's greater than his brothers. The pasuk says in Vayikra Perek Chaf Aleph, pasuk Yud. What does that mean? Hakohen hagodol me'echav. That implies that the Kohen Gadol must be treated with greater respect, with greater reverence. He's on a higher level than the ordinary Jews, than the rest of Klal Yisrael. So the Mishnah tells us here, firstly, where he is equal to everyone else, where he's equal with everyone else. Kohen Gadol don v'donin oisoi. A Kohen Gadol may serve as a judge, as a dayan. He may sit on the bezdin as a dayan, v'donin oisoi, and others may judge him. That is, he may be tried in a bezdin for an aveira or for a claim that someone has against him. If he committed an aveira that carries the death penalty, he's judged by the Sanhedrin HaGedolah, by the Bezdin HaGodol. If he commits an aveira punishable by malchus or financial matters, he has a financial dispute with another yid, he's judged by a Bezdin of 3. Don v'doni noisoi, like everyone else. Meid u'meidin noisoi. He may give edus about others. He may testify in a bezdin about others, and others may testify about him. As a matter of fact, the Kohen Gadol should not testify because it is degrading for someone of that importance to stand in court as a witness. The respect, the kavod that the bezdin must show to the Kohen Gadol overrides his obligation to testify. So the Gemara therefore tells us in Sanhedrin that this Mishnah is referring to a case where the Kohen Gadol knows edus, he knows testimony about the son of the king, about the son of the melech, and in that case, if the king himself, whose status we're going to find out soon, is greater, is higher than that of the Kohen Gadol, if the king comes to the court to hear the testimony, then it is not disrespectful for the Kohen Gadol to be called to testify. But otherwise, it is beneath his dignity. Zog the Mishnah weiter, Choyletz, a Kohen Gadol may perform chalitza with his brother's widow, v'cholten le'ishtoi u'miyabim misishtoi, and his brothers may perform chalitza or yibum with his wife, with his widow, aval hu eino miyabim mipnei shehu also be'almono. But unlike other kohanim who are allowed, who are mutar to marry an almona, he, however, is not. A Kohen Gadol may not marry an almona, and therefore he may not perform yibum, because as a Kohen Gadol, he's forbidden to marry an almona. He's forbidden to marry an almona. Now, also important to understand that it is al pi halacha, it's not considered disrespectful for the memory of a Kohen Gadol for his widow to remarry. And therefore, she may therefore perform yibum, through which she becomes married to his brother. She becomes a yavama to his brother. Or if she doesn't want to marry his brother, then there is a chalitza which permits her, therefore, to marry anyone else. Now the Mishnah continues. The Mishnah now states that there are some halachas where a Kohen Gadol is treated differently from other Jews. The Torah asers, the Torah forbids a Kohen Gadol to become Tomei Lemes. Under no circumstances may he become Tomei Lemes. He may not become Tomei Lemes from any dead person. Even his Shiva Krovim, even his closest relative. As the Pasuk says, Ulemesh lo yovoi, it says, he shall not come near any dead person. A Kohen Gadol is forbidden to have any kind of tumas mace. And therefore, he may not become Tomei, says the Pasuk. Afilu le'oviv u'le'ima lo yitoma, says the Pasuk. Le'oviv u'le'ima lo yitoma. He may not become Tomei to his father or to his mother. So the Mishnah explains what a Kohen Gadol does at the funeral procession of his relative, of one of the 7 relatives that every person has. Says the Mishnah, Meish lo meis. If someone related to him dies, if one of his 7 relatives die, Eino yoitza achar hamita, he may not follow immediately behind the people who are carrying the and who are carrying the coffin to the kvura, because if it's one of his relatives, he may become overwhelmed with the grief, he may become overwhelmed with the avelus, and he may lose himself or forget himself, and may touch the Oron, and therefore violate the Isur of becoming Tomei Lemes. He's not allowed to become Tomei Lemes. So what does he do? Does he completely ignore? Does he completely look aside? Does he completely forget? Is it possible, afilu for the Kohen Gadol, not to be mishtatef, not to be involved in some way in the burial, in the funeral of one of his relatives? So what does he do? The Mishnah says. So what does he do? Rather, when the people carrying the Oren are hidden from view, he appears. And when they appear, he's hidden. What does that mean? That means that he must keep the carriers of the coffin out of sight. He's allowed to enter a street only after they have turned the corner and disappeared from view. And he goes out with them only as far as the entrance of the city, where he then stops and returns home, meaning to say that he may not go beyond the city gates. Why? Because outside the city, there are no streets and alleyways where he's able to be hidden from them, where he may hide himself and keep the coffin out of sight. As in the first part, when they're in the procession towards the Beis Olam, towards the cemetery, hey nichsin v'hu nigle, hey niglin v'hu nichse. But once they come out of the Pesach Hayir, then he must disappear. Divrei Rabbi Meir, so says Rabbi Meir. So says Rabbi Meir. The next Tana holds that the Kohen Gadol may not accompany the coffin of his relative at all. Rabbi Meir holds that he may accompany it, but just not within the sight of the Oron. He may accompany it out of kavod to one of the 7 relatives whom he's mourning. Says Rabbi Yehuda, Eino yoytze min hamikdash. Oh no, the Kohen Gadol may not even leave the temple, may not leave the Beis Hamikdash to follow the Oron. How does he know that? Because it says, Legabe Kohen Gadol, for who lost one of his 7 relatives, it says, Umina Mikdash lo yetze, the Pasuk says. Umina Mikdash lo yetze. He shall not leave the temple, the Pasuk says. So what is this machloikes? What is this machloikes? Rabbi Yehuda takes the Pasuk literally. Umina Mikdash lo yetze. If one of his 7 relatives he died, stay put. You can't go out. Whereas Rabbi Meir, who permits the Kohen Gadol to leave the Beis Hamikdash. Interprets the pasuk, interprets the word umin amigdash. Migdash means sanctity. In other words, the pasuk is telling him he shall not leave his state of kedusha, meaning to say he's warned yet again that he should avoid any kind of situation where he could possibly or potentially become Tomei Lebeis. And therefore, according to Rab Meir, as long as he takes the measures to prevent himself from touching the Aron, such as keeping it out of sight, then he's allowed to follow the funeral procession. So Machlokes Rab Yehuda and Rab Meir is how the word Migdash is interpreted in the pasuk Umin Amigdash lo yetze. According to Rab Yehuda, literally he can't come out, and according to Rab Meir, Migdash means he shall not in any way infringe upon his kedusha, upon the fact that he may not become Tomei Lebeis. But if he takes the precautions necessary for him not to become Tomei Lebeis, he may follow. He may follow how? Ein nichsin v'hu nigle. Ein niglin v'hu nichse. So now the procedure followed by a Kohen Gadol. What is the procedure that is followed by a Kohen Gadol when comforting the mourners? When comforting the mourners, says the Mishnah, Ukeshehu menachem acherim, when he comforts others who are in mourning, right? In other words, the Kohen Gadol may attend the funeral of a non-relative, provided that he avoids becoming Tomei by touching the mace, by touching the Oron, or by entering the cemetery. So since he is not as deeply affected by this passing, by this death of someone not related to him, so he may not lose himself, he may not become Torud, he may not all of a sudden go close to the Oron. He can go. There's no concern that he should become Tomei. Right? The Rav said, when a mace is not one of his 7 relatives, says the Rav, everybody agrees that he can go. The only issue is about his 7 relatives. Why can he go when it's a non-relative? The loy torid, he's not torud, he's not fanumen, his head is not all jumbled up, he's not possibly going to be metam himself. So therefore, after the kavura, there's a shura, there's a nichum avelim. So when he comforts others who are in mourning, he doesn't mingle with everyone else. Rather, as is customary, after the kavura, the avelim stand in place, and all the people pass in front of them, one after the other, offering divrei tanchumim. That's called a shura. That's called a shura. People stand on one side, people stand on the other side, and the avelim pass through, right? The symbolism here is very, very deep, that people surround the avelim who just lost one of their dear ones, near ones, and now they're surrounded again by live people. So a shura means people stand on the right side, people stand on the left side, and the avelim pass through this shura, and everyone, as they pass through, as the avelim pass through, are menachem avelim. Extend to them nichum avelim. Okay, after the kvura, the avelim, the mourners, stand in place, and all the people pass in front of them, one after the other, offering words of comfort. Ve'amemune, who is the memune? The memune is the Sgan Kohen Gadol, the deputy Kohen Gadol. Mematzo beino leveinam, places the Kohen Gadol in the middle between himself and the people. That is, the Kohen Gadol goes in the middle with his Sgan, with his deputy on his right, and the people on his left. And in this way, it's obvious, it's visual, that special kavod is given to the Kohen Gadol. Parenthetically, you see here in the Rav that that at the very v'chol ha'am oivrim zeh achazeh u'menachem im ha'over she'omid b'ma'amodoi v'kol echad oimer lo, everyone says tisnachem min hashamayim, tisnachem min hashamayim, which parenthetically is still customary by Sfardim today. We say to Avelim Amokim Yinachem Eschem B'Sol Shaveli Tzimim Yerushalayim, and by Sfardim, as I saw vividly in the Syrian community, they say Tenuchamu min hashamayim. You shall be comforted min hashamayim, which means the Rebbeinu Shalom should comfort you. Based on this, Tisnachem min hashamayim. It's a nice aside. Now, what about when the Kohen Gadol himself is in mourning? When he is in mourning and is comforted by others, so kol ha'am oimrim lo, all the people say to him, Anu kaparosecha, we are your atonement. That is, you will receive atonement through us because we accept whatever suffering is meant to befall you. V'hu oimer lohen, and he responds, Tizborchu min hashamayim, may you be blessed from heaven. And when they bring him the Sudas Avro, what is the Sudas Avro? After Avelim returned from the cemetery, after they return from the burial, the very first meal they may not have of their own, but rather people, friends, neighbors bring them a Sudas Avro, to give them brius, to give them a new lease on life. A mourner is forbidden to eat his own food at the first meal after the burial. Rather, friends and relatives provide the food, that is the Sudas Avro. The Sudas Avro. So, when they feed him the mourner's meal, the Sudas Avro, all the people recline on the ground to show that they too grieve, mourn over his loss. And he reclines not on the floor, but on a bench, because it's inappropriate, afilu under these circumstances of Avelus, that a Kohen Gadol should sit on the floor. Rather, here is the reverse. Usually, the Avelim are the ones who sit lowly, who sit on the low stool. And here is the reverse. He should not sit on a low stool. He sits on a safsel. And they, the Kol Ha'am, those who come to mourn him, they sit ala aretz. They sit ala aretz. Okay.